Can't wait for Miss Patty. Welcome to Black News Tonight. I'm Mike Hill, filling in for the great Marc Lamont Hill tonight. Appreciate you so much letting me join you tonight. We got a lot to get to, so let's make it happen. And we start off in the state of Texas, where arrest warrants were authorized, believe it or not, today for Democratic state representatives who left the state, hoping to prevent the passing of a GOP-backed bill that they say will restrict voting rights. This has been an ongoing situation. The lawmakers went to Washington, D.C. to meet with Democratic officials, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Vice President Kamala Harris is backing their move, which denies GOP Governor Greg Abbott a quorum in a special session to pass a measure critics say will limit voting. During an event Monday in Michigan, Harris applauded their, quote, extraordinary courage and commitment. And earlier today in Philadelphia, President Biden delivered an impassioned speech on voting rights and the GOP's efforts to restrict them.
For make no mistake, bullies and merchants of fear, peddlers of lies are threatening the very foundation of our country. It gives me no pleasure to say this. I never thought in my entire career I'd ever have to say it. But I swore an oath to you, to God, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. And that's an oath that forms a sacred trust to defend America against all threats, both foreign and domestic.
Two main election bills under consideration in the Texas House and Senate. Both would eliminate drive-through voting and 24-hour early voting, expand early voting hours to some counties, add identification requirements for voting by mail, among other requirements. But as we know, this isn't just an issue for the state of Texas. This is happening around the country right now. It's already passed in states like Florida, Georgia, and in Iowa. Joining me now to talk about this is Ameshia Cross. She is a Democratic strategist and political commentator. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight here, Amisha. Hey, look, here's the thing. Many say Texas Democrats leaving the state, all that's going to do is just delay the inevitable. But if you look at it glass half full, Amisha, what can they accomplish towards their goal moving forward by this move?
I think that Texas legislators leaving Texas and coming to the state capitol really puts pressure on federal legislators. It puts pressure on those Senate members. It puts pressure on the Biden administration to actually do something, because these Texas legislators are willing to put their freedom on the line. Let's be mindful that Greg Abbott has threatened to have them arrested. So they are literally coming here as a last-ditch effort to try to stall this for as long as they possibly can. We know that in Texas this bill is going to turn into law, that the numbers are there. The Republicans want it to happen, and they will make it happen. But at the federal level, the only thing that can stop these types of actions from stopping people, preventing those who look like you or I from getting to the polls and actually having our votes counted, is to get rid of the filibuster, is to make sure that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passes, to make sure that we get the For the People Act. Those are things we have to do to protect the safety of our democracy and protect the vote.
All right. Okay, then, Amisha, let's talk about that, because President Biden came out. A lot of Democrats would say about time. He needed to be a little bit more impassioned, a little bit more strong, a little bit more fired up and showing some emotion today. And he had the most emotion that he's shown so far. He's been focused on infrastructure, passion towards Democrats, and putting the pressure on people like Kristen Sinema or the West Virginia senator to get this filibuster taken care of and get this pushed through the legislation and through the Senate so that we can get the voting rights that black people have fought so hard for, and continue that the people that actually put him in office get the rights that they deserve.
That's a great question, Mike. And I think that following that speech today, which was a great speech, it was impassioned, it was the type of speech we would expect from a Joe Biden. But at the end of the day, the major thing that was lacking from President Biden's speech today was an actual action plan that came from the White House. The word filibuster was not used one time in that speech. What the White House was going to do to ensure that they were protecting voters' rights was not mentioned. We know what the DOJ is doing. We know that these court processes are going to be long and arduous. We know that Georgia is being sued, for instance. That whole process could end in 2024. There is no guarantee that anything is going to happen within the next year or in time for midterms. We need action now. And I do think that the speech was good, but did it actually give those leaders who are on the forefront in terms of this fight, the people who led those buses across the South to talk to people about why this is so damaging, did it give them any sense of power or strength that what was coming from the White House was going to change things? Absolutely not. Biden needs to be stronger. He needs to put the filibuster on the line. He needs to speak in no uncertain terms and say, we are getting rid of the filibuster. Put both Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema on the ropes. That is the
Yes.
only way we will be able to see a clear democracy, and that people who look like you, I, and other viewers who are, tuned into the Black News Channel will actually have a moment to have our rights upheld. It is our constitutional right to have voting access in this country, and anything that limits it is against our Constitution and is against the democracy for which this nation is supposed to stand.
Yeah, and that's right. He also has to realize who actually put him in office. I think he realizes that putting that pressure on Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema will do the job to get that filibuster taken care of, at least take care of it when it comes to at least amending it a little bit. All right, so the Texas bill, it does a lot of things we know about, but this isn't just about Texas. We heard about that, of course, create new regulations, early voting hours, identification. We've heard about that through numerous states. Let's talk about the glass half full, Amisha, because I talked to you about this before. Could this fire up not just black people, but the Democratic base? Because we're talking about voter suppression and what the Republicans are trying to do. And we know the attitude of people during the midterm. They usually don't go out. Could this be a glass half full type of moment where they actually will be fired up to go out for the midterm and vote for the Democrats to keep the Senate, the House, and keep Joe Biden's agenda alive?
Voter suppression tactics do have a backfiring effect of galvanizing individuals who normally don't show up. So I do think that there's a chance that we'll see more people at the polls, but that doesn't mean that there will be more access. Just because more people show up doesn't mean that removing polling places, doesn't mean that stopping early voting or shortening the early voting days or upending a lot of the vote by mail options that we've seen is going to actually help those individuals. More voter turnout does not adequately voter suppression. We need to make sure those laws are. I
don't mean to cut you off. Then what can we do? If they're going to suppress the vote, what can black folks do? Because look, they're suppressing the vote. They're not taking away the vote, they're saying, but they're suppressing the vote. Should we educate them a little bit more? What can we do to make sure that our voices continue to be heard?
We should educate. I definitely agree with that. We should continue to advocate. We should continue to tweet, hashtag. We should continue to be in the streets. We also need to not only look at Democrat and our Democratic leaders, but also those Republican leaders. Because guess what? You know who also gets cut out when we're talking about reducing mail-in voting? Republican voters, older white voters, those voters who have historically used that more than anybody else. This is a double-edged sword that I think is going to bite many of those voters in the behind as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're only listening to the big lie that's coming out from the GOP right now and not paying attention to what could actually happen to them as well. Amisha, always appreciate your perspective. Thank you for joining me here tonight on Black News Tonight. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Good seeing you. Meanwhile, a federal lawsuit is expected to be announced for the death of Elizabeth City man Andrew Brown Jr. Now, national civil rights attorneys Ben Crump, Harry Daniels, Bakari Sellers, they are set to share the filing, and the suit is said to be seeking over $30 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Now, you'll remember Brown was killed by Pasquotank County deputies in April as they were serving search and arrest warrants. However, the district attorney there, he decided to decline charges because he said the deputies' shooting was justified. Brown's family described the shooting as an execution after viewing the body cam footage. Meanwhile, the Oklahoma Board of Education is adopting emergency rules in response to critical race theory. Of course, this is a big topic right here on Black News Tonight. Marc does a good job with that. The board approved the ban on critical race theory in schools with possible suspension of licenses for teachers who defy the order. In a 5-1 ruling, the state legislature approved a law banning CRT from being taught in K through 12 schools. Now, Oklahoma joins a handful of states that have banned CRT, including Tennessee, Idaho, Texas, and Iowa. The new law prohibits the teaching of certain topics on race and gender. Schools are also prohibited from adopting diversity, equity, or inclusion plans that incorporate concepts. The one opposing vote against the measure came from the sole black woman on the board. I'm pretty sure a lot of the people that actually voted for this, for the banning of CRT, still don't realize what CRT is. But once again, Marc does a great job trying to explain and break it down for you out there. We got to stay educated, y'all. A town in Massachusetts is recruiting black people to serve on its Reparations Committee. Also a big topic among us here in our community. Amherst Town Council searching for members to fill its Reparations Committee, which is being established to address the town's long-standing history of racial inequity. The committee, known as African Heritage Reparations Assembly, will study and develop reparations proposals for people of African heritage after hundreds of years of unpaid forced slavery. Amherst looking for black residents in the 7-member committee. And be sure to join the conversation. Of course, we want to hear from you. We need you to head over to our BNC Instagram and our Twitter pages to let us know how you feel. Be sure to check out our website at bnc.tv. Oh, I'm looking forward to this because she has been feeding our souls.